Welcome to For the Record, an unfiltered view on current trends and timeless advice for surviving in the aesthetics industry. Whether you're an injector, practice owner, sales rep, or marketer, it's time to set the record straight. Each week we cut through the chaos and showcase diverse perspectives and winning ideas from the best minds in the industry. I'm your host, Dr. Tiffany Hall, Chief Growth Officer at Aesthetic Record. Now, let's get started on this week's episode. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of For the Record. And today we are all about the green, all about the money, and really thinking about how to make it most effective and I guess make your money work for you in your practices, and to find out the dollars and cents of things and how to be a proper accountant and good steward of your money. And so we have today with us the experts, one of our new partners here at AR who has done some amazing things in the industry, an expert in the actual med spa world, which I think is very not common to find these days. But we have with us the Liguori Accounting team, which involves the owner, Nick Liguori, who's a CPA. He's been in public accounting, private accounting, and now he's doing med spa world. So that's, I'm sure, a big change. And also Dan Simard, who is his business development director, who is growing the business and hopefully giving them all the clients, because we all need all the help in accounting, because all of us are thinking like P&L, taxes, like what? I think every April 15th I get nervous, I start sweating. That's your playground for you guys at Liguori. So joining us today virtually from New Hampshire, welcome to the Liguori group, guys. We're glad to have you on the podcast.
Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you for the introduction.
Yeah, thank you so much, Tiffany.
Well, we just had you guys at Accelerator, and you shared so much great knowledge, and I really mean that there's not many people who focus on our industry. I think we have a lot of great accountants in our industry who are doing things, but the med spa world, as you guys know, is just different. We have our own set of nuances and weird things that happen here that I think make it very unique for you guys to know really how it operates inside the practice. So give us an idea of who you are, what you do, and then we'll get started.
Sure. So we are a outsourced accounting team based out of New Hampshire. We provide a full service accounting solution specifically for med spas. So that involves everything from your bookkeeping, day-to-day bookkeeping, your tax work at the end of the year, and also fractional CFO support. So we take a team approach with our team internally to help provide an outsourced resource for our clients in this. And it's like you have your own outsourced accounting department in your back pocket is how we like to pose things. And yeah, we've been doing this now I started the business in 2020, and it's really grown organically in this space over the last few years. And we found this to be such a great industry to work with. And we really feel there's a lot of value we offer to practitioners, business owners in the med spa space. Dan, anything you want to add to
that? No, I started with Liguori Accounting in 2022 with not an accounting background, surprisingly. I mean, I took some accounting classes, but my main focus is on client experience, sales, marketing, operations, things like that. So I support Nick with whatever he needs me to do, and I'm a doer just like you, Tiffany, and I like to get things done. So he relies on me for that kind of stuff, and love working with Liguori Accounting. We've built an incredible team as a foundation, and great accountants, and love the space that we work with, the med spas that we work with. The owners are great, and the partners too in the space have been awesome. Like yourself, Tiffany, it's just been great to build those relationships.
Well, I found you guys through AmSpa. I think I've mentioned that to you when we first met. You were on their website listed, which is a great place to be, and I'm sure helps drive business. But I'm like, if you're good enough for them, you're good enough for us. No, I'm kidding. They're obviously, leading the charge in our industry, and they know the who's who of all the vendors. And so you guys come well pedigreed and well respected. But it's interesting, Nick, you're a CPA. I have a finance degree and 2 other business degrees, so 3 in total. And I don't know a darn thing about accounting. I mean, I do. I have a good working knowledge, but it's very, very complex. It's very challenging. And for the lay person who is not a business person to start with, much less an accounting numbers person, it's daunting. And I think as we look at med spas, at least today in 2024, they're growing without even knowing how they're growing in many cases. They don't know what their numbers are. They don't know the profit versus the revenue versus, what their costs are of their goods sold. It's just kind of a hodgepodge mess for many of us. And I think it's moving so fast. So give us an idea as you look at clients and you start working with somebody from the get-go. What are the things that you tend to see are the hot buttons and the things that make you, first of all, keep you employed, but second of all, make you take pause and say, gosh, if we could just figure out how to teach people to do this thing better or more intelligently, they could really help their business?
Yeah, great points there. A few things on that. Let the experts do what the experts do. Obviously, I'm not going to go injecting Botox into anybody, and likewise, we should let professionals handle the finance side of your business. So that's where we provide a lot of value, is being that expert for the small business owner, which is often the case with med spas who may not have that deep financial background. We can give them that support, peace of mind around the financial aspect of their business, and make sure they know things are being taken care of on that side of their business. So there's a lot of complexity, like you mentioned, as far as the finances can go and can be. So we really like to simplify things for the business owner and break it down for them to the key pieces that are important for them. So knowing what your margins are, are you profitable? Maybe you are, maybe you aren't. What does your growth look like right now? And are you trending in a good direction? Is growth, a positive for the bottom line, or is it happening too quickly or not efficiently? So these are some of the big pictures we look at, but also just identifying, our expertise in the industry helps us identify, are your financials in line with your peers and other med spas across the country or in your area? So that knowledge and that expertise is really helpful to give, the med spa owners that idea of how they're progressing and where they're going.
Yeah, and Dan, from your perspective, how does it work? So, Nick comes in with the expertise in accounting, and how does it work for you as a person who's really shepherding the client through? They've called you in a panic, like, what am I going to do now? And you're helping them go through that journey of, the oh crap moment all the way through. Gosh, we have this all figured out. We're good to go. What does the physical process of that look like to bring on a new client and to get them really in your world?
Yeah, so the conversation always starts with me. We call it a discovery call. So that's really where I dig in and find where the pain points are, and how we can alleviate those pain points through the value we bring. And so Nick mentioned, the peace of mind. That's really where we try to establish. That's where we find a lot of owners is, they're scattered. They're not sure if their numbers are being maintained well because either they're doing it themselves or they're using a professional that they're not confident with anymore. And that's not uncommon. So, we like even from professionals, we help bring a lot of peace of mind around their accounting because we not only know accounting really well, and we have a great internal process that helps us to maintain the integrity and the quality of the books. But we know the industry well too, which helps us to maintain that quality. So starts with that initial call, discovering the pain points. What are you looking to get? Why did you reach out to us? Why are you unhappy with your current situation? So there are a lot of whys. And then what questions in terms of like, tell me about you as a business owner, you as a practice, and then building a complete profile of the firm, of the owner, of their pain points. And then from there, taking it to kind of we call it an options call where we address, okay, this is the conversation we had. This is how we can alleviate those pain points, and this is the value that we can drive into your business. And then from there, we start the onboarding process, which we have built even efficiencies around that. Is let's hit the ground running. I don't like to waste time. Owners, med spa owners, they're motivated. They don't like to waste time. So we've built an efficient onboarding process that helps them feel like we have everything we need to efficiently manage your books. And the transition is as smooth as possible. So we like to make sure everything's in place so that way we have some autonomy internally and we're not constantly hounding the busy business owner trying to find out, what is this transaction? What is that transaction? What was this check floor? So we try to build efficiencies in the process, even through, first touch point through to onboarding where we're actively helping them with those pain points that they've addressed with us when they first reached out to us.
Yeah. And the other key piece of that process is identifying what level of support that business or business owner needs and is looking for. For some, it may be as simple as I just need my books kept up with and up to date on a monthly basis and, see a P&L at the end of the month. And that's great. Others are going to want more frequent touch points and more, in-depth analysis or help understanding their financials. And that's where we feel like we can bring the greatest value is interpreting those financials and that financial data for the clients and helping them have a better understanding of their business. It's hard to have a good sense of the dollars and cents in the day when you're so tied into the day to day and seeing money coming in and going out like as quickly as it does with med spas. So it's helpful on a monthly or quarterly basis to take a step back, assess where things are at, see where your metrics are lining up, and then, have that peace of mind that you're moving forward in a good place.
Yeah.
Well, I think that it becomes objective. I look at med spas. I've got several friends, obviously, in the industry for a long time who own med spas everywhere. And I have a lot who are recovering from bad accounting work. Many have spent a lot of money that they could have, and they found somebody like you who said, wait a minute, what are you doing? This is all wrong. And so they've had those horror stories that you mentioned. So I think people are scared to kind of pull the trigger. And also, I think about even myself. I have a consulting firm. It's like getting chastised. Like you sit down in that meeting, you're like, oh gosh, I'm going to get yelled at for not being smart enough and good enough in my business. They're going to take me to task. I think people are scared of that. I really do think it's a real fear. I actually mentioned to our friends at Maven, I was like, I hate the idea of going to a new CPA because it's like, am I going to get yelled at for 2 hours? And I think it's real because people don't know. And just like with all things in our life, when we don't know, we're scared of the truth. And sometimes it's like, if I don't look, it's not real.
Right.
And so I think about what you mentioned, Nick, with the dollars and cents. As you guys look at med spas, one of the things I see here most often in AR is like they're working so much harder and their top line looks incredible, but they're profiting the same that they were profiting last year, working way less hard, doing a different mix of services. So as that's happening and you're seeing these numbers change each month, are you guys, even in the CFO role, the virtual or the fractional CFO role, giving them advice of like, wait a minute, you're working really hard, but maybe not quite as smart as you could be working? And how do you guys kind of help them to steer the business when the numbers come in and maybe aren't as favorable as you'd hope they'd be?
Yeah, great question. Yeah, we look at those type of numbers, at least on a quarterly basis with most of our clients and assessing some of those key metrics like, does your payroll make sense? From a high level, does your payroll make sense based on the revenue you're bringing in from those employees, those providers? It's most simple, like if not, why not? Are we utilizing everyone's time efficiently? Do we have gaps in the scheduling? Can we be more efficient with our workforce? That's just one example. Another is, your costs. How much are you spending on product and material? Is that lining up? Are there better opportunities there? And as you know, equipment costs are a huge expense for med spas, and proper planning around that can save a lot as far as cash flow goes. So making sure you're making the right moves on a few of those fronts can make a big difference. Especially in the earlier stages with med spas, it's like cash flow is so important to getting off the ground and getting things ramped up to a place where it's at a really profitable level. So it's like sometimes it's important to preserve cash for those growth phases and make sure you're planning for that rather than say, all right, whatever, I'm going to pay cash for this equipment so I don't have to worry about having debt on the books, but that may not be the best game plan for the long run. So yeah.
Yeah, that's the finance girl coming out. I'm like, debt is good. If it's cheaper for me to use your money than my money, we're using your money, baby, all day long.
Right.
But I think you're taught from an early age, from being a small child, that debt's terrible. Like, right, going into debt's terrible. I'm like, but the time value of money equation here tells me it does get really complex. But you mentioned, looking at HR cost. I think too, part of it is, what is a business's goal? I had this discussion with the practice last week. They're like, our payroll's too high, and I said, well, if your goal is to not have to ever again recruit and onboard and train, then pay them more and keep them. If you're okay with that, and you're like, I don't care who's here, I'm fine with that. I want to pay them a lower, a more acceptable wage, and you're okay with that, with the burden of having to hire and onboard and all those things, and it's not as important to you, but you're buying peace of mind in the sense of paying them more to stay. So I think part of it too is every owner has a different goal. Are they a lifestyle owner? Are they going to be like an enterprise owner? What's their financial freedom look like in their mind? And I think that probably is complicated for you guys to figure out. Good best practices say this, but I get that you want to do this instead, and I understand why. But how does that kind of work with, within, Dan, what you're doing, the discovery call, to say, what do you want to do? Do you want to sell? Do you want to scale? Do you want to just, buy nice purses and have nice houses? Like, what is your goal overall? And how do you guys change the process of what you do based on those kinds of things?
Yeah. So in the discovery call, it's a lot of listening. So I do a lot of less talking, more listening. And sometimes owners divulge their goals, or I can kind of intuit what their goals are based on some of the pain points. Like, all right, I don't know if I need to grow multi-location. Is this the right time? Should I be looking into buying another location, or should I be looking to hire another employee? I don't even know how to compensate them. So things like that, I'm listening and keying in on. So that way, when we get to the onboarding phase, when they choose to work with us, we can dig into those things a little bit further. Okay, you said this during the discovery call. How does that translate into your goal? What's your goal? Do you want to open up another location? Do you want to be the owner of multiple locations, or do you want to kind of build up your single location? Or, what kind of employee are you looking for? Things like that. What's the compensation structure do you want to put into place? So it's really, the first step is kind of listening and letting the owner talk through their situation as whatever they're feeling right now. And then through the onboarding phase, it's digging in and figuring out what some of those goals that they specified to us, or pulling out some of those goals.
Right. And every business is different in a lot of ways, and every owner's motivations are going to be different. So as part of our CFO process too, when we're creating budgets and forecasts, that's the first question is, where do you want to be? Because if we don't know what the end goal is, how do we know how to get there, right? You need a roadmap. You need to determine what that process is to get from A to Z, and that's going to be completely driven by the business owner and what they want out of their business. And like you said, Tiffany, it's you may want to be a more passive owner in your business, and that's going to mean your payroll costs are going to be higher because you're going to have to hire more providers if you don't want to be involved in that piece of the day-to-day. Or the opposite, you want to crank out as much many patients a day as you can and maximize your own profitability, and that's great too. So it's really what does the owner want to see, and then from there we can roadmap how to get there and what the end result is going to look like.
And I think that's really where we differentiate ourselves, that concierge, like high touch experience that most accounting firms you don't get. It's really digging in and listening to the owner, figuring out what the goals are, figuring out the starting point, and creating a budget, helping them track their finances to determine how are they doing in relation to their budget, and then those goals. Look into the future to see how they're measuring up to their goals that they specified to us.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because I feel like in many cases, Dan, that it's like, when you go to a law firm, the paralegal does all the work for you, or in the dentist, it's always like the hygienist. You never see the actual dentist or the actual attorney. I feel like in many cases, when you go to an accounting firm, you only see the bookkeeper. The CPA or the CFO never gets involved. It's like, well, the books are clean, everything looks good, we're good to go. And I'm the kind of person, much like what you guys are mentioning, that wants to know, what do I do better? Like, I get that everything is clean and neat and we're going to have, no audits, all the things are great. But what do I do to grow? What do I do to get more efficient, to get smarter, to get, I have a lot of friends who do all these things where they're not gaming the system. I don't want to say that, but they have different like tranches of LLCs, and this thing's owned by this one, and they have all these Nevada laws now that you can save all this money, and you're paying into your FSA that you get back as an income, and all these crazy things that, guys, I got to tell you, I'm like, it sounds exhausting for me. Like I want to be a gazillionaire too, but I don't have the energy or the time. And they're all like, well, I have a really good CPA, or I've got a really good CFO. I'm like, you just sound like you're smart, but you've got Nick in your back pocket telling you how to do it all. So how many of your conversations are about that? Like, once the business is kind of flowing, is now let's optimize and like superpower your business and make money on your passive, and make money while you sleep on things that you've invested properly here and there. Like, how much of that part do you guys do? And is it even part of your world, or do you kind of leave that to the next phase of their growth?
Yeah, so just to clarify, we're not financial advisors, or we don't do anything in the investment side of things. But what we can do is help from, from the tax planning side, making sure you are optimizing your tax position based on your state or your business structure, your situation, however it may be. But also keeping in mind, like you said, the complexities that can come with that. Like, you may implement this very complex plan, but is the end result worth that? And there's a lot of talk out there, whether it's on social media or between business owners, on these secret tax loopholes and things like that. And a lot of that is just that, it's talk, and it really doesn't apply to your average business owner in a lot of ways. So make sure you're sifting through the noise and kind of the distractions, and if it seems too good to be true with the IRS, it definitely is. So, but yeah, we definitely help make sure you're, optimizing your tax position. And at the end of the day, like, if your business is growing and you're becoming more successful, the fact of the matter is you're going to pay more in taxes. But how do you plan for that, and how do you minimize what you legally owe? So that's what we try and do. again, that peace of mind is huge. Like no one wants to wake up on April 15th and have an email saying they owe a huge sum of money for taxes. So like we try and take a proactive approach where we're, identifying those tax liabilities throughout the year, doing quarterly planning, and make sure you're on track and there's no surprises once you get to the end of the year. So, the more involved and proactive we can be, the better the result for our clients. So that's our goal.
And tax planning is, something that comes up constantly with med spa owners. So we've really started to key in, or not started, but we really key in on that value is how can we help them appropriately plan around tax season, is to mitigate risk and to leverage all tax opportunities possible. And we always, we warn to your listeners and everybody who's tuning in, just be wary of the TikTok tax advice. We always say, find a good CPA and trust your CPA. Not everything you hear on TikTok is true.
Yeah, unless you've got Musk or Bezos money or Trump money, I'm not sure that those loopholes really pay off for you. But, it's funny, I think about this a lot is, if you're on TikTok having to hustle that to make your living, you might not be the person who is making the billions of dollars in the tax loopholes to give me advice. But
Right.
What do I know, guys? I don't do TikTok, so what do I know? But no, I love that you mentioned, Nick, that you guys aren't the financial planning aspect of it, because people get really confused. We partner with Maven, as you guys know, who really gets involved in much more of that part of it, the financial advising aspect of it, and really helping, with the decision making long term. But at the end of the day, if you don't have the money buttoned up correctly, we do reporting here. I just mentioned to the guys before we came on, we've got a report thing I want to figure out from them, pick their brain how to do it correctly with QuickBooks and with reports. Because in a system like ours, when we have 9,000 med spas doing it, one wrong number and everyone's tanked. Like we do one wrong thing and everyone's affected. And you guys probably see this all the time, bring numbers over. And I think about things, Nick, like they don't account for their inventory correctly, or I see people who have a cost to company in a system of $0. Like, how will your accountant know what you spent on the product that you bought to know how what you made in profit? And it's like, I don't think you know what you need until you figure out that you don't have it. And then it's like the moment of, if I could just go back 12 months and fix it all. And so as I'm looking at this as a new business owner coming in, wanting to maximize my time with you guys, if I come on as a client, what are the things I should be thinking about today? Because I think we also hear, I'm a baby med spa. I'm a little bitty guy. Like now's when it's important to get it done right. Start from the beginning correctly, lay the right foundation. But what are things that you guys, look at a business and say, a beautifully built business has this in place always?
Yeah, great question. And we see those pain points a lot where it's an established med spa we're working with, and maybe they haven't been keeping things up, from a bookkeeping standpoint all along, but now they're at the point where they're considering selling in the next few years or looking at bringing on an investor, and their books aren't at a place where they can present them and feel confident, or the, third party feels confident in those books. So setting that foundation early on in your business life cycle is crucial, and it's worth spending on an outsourced team, or having a professional do it for you, or make sure you're doing it right at the least, to make sure you're getting off on the right foot. So that on its own is huge. But some of the major items we see that can potentially be issues is, one, like, are you tracking your equipment and those items properly? Oftentimes these are capital leases, and maybe you're just expensing that monthly bill for your equipment, and that's not necessarily the right way to handle that. So that's one big item that people, if you're doing it yourself, may not know the ins and outs of recording fixed assets and loans and things like that. Another big one, like you mentioned, is inventory. People are, med spa owners often are just expensing their product and material when they're buying it, which is okay on a cash basis, but you aren't getting a true picture of your gross margin, and you're not properly matching your cost of goods sold to your sales when product is being used. That's not matching with when the sale occurs or the treatments occur. So those items are huge. Getting inventory squared away in whatever system you're using to track that is key, and making sure that's properly reflected on your, accounting system, QuickBooks, or whatever it may be, is essential to getting that right. And that's definitely an area where that issue compounds over time. If you're not tracking your inventory properly, there's a lot of ripple effects from that. And as you grow too, there's definitely some liability and risk with not having good inventory controls in place, whether it's, theft or whatever it may be. So that's a key area to keep an eye on for new med spas and established ones as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. We work a lot here with like cyber liability, cybersecurity insurance. And I just had a discussion last week of they had a med spa client who was trying to get insurance, and they said, we need to see your tax return to, for your business. And it was so off that when they had an event that happened and they had to cash in their insurance on it. And they went to do the business disruption insurance, when you're out of business for a few days. And it was such a small amount because they had done all these like gymnastics on their taxes, and they actually made way more than they showed. And so it ended up, they looked like they had no value as a business, like they were valueless. Yeah. And so when they went to kind of cash in this disruption insurance, it was like, well, you make nothing, so you don't really get a whole lot of disruption insurance. And it's like, wait a minute, I have a giant operation here. It's like, well, unfortunately, your taxes don't show that. So it's like, I think at some point there's like a trade-off of you want to get the tax break, but also you've got to kind of be true about who you are, because other things depend on that number being as accurate as it can be. And so it's one of the, it's like the cost of doing business, as they say. But I hear that a lot of like, oh yeah, we show we make nothing ever. I'm like, well, if you go get a loan for your business, like they're going to look at that. How will you present that you make nothing ever and you haven't made anything in 10 years, but yet you're, finance worthy? So like, do those kind of things factor in? Are you guys looking at like how they get financing and loans and structuring things like that as well?
Definitely. Yeah. And that's a huge problem. I mean, we run into that all the time with clients or prospects. It's like, I can't get a loan because my tax return shows I had a loss last year, but I made all this money. So why? And, part of that is maybe you can paint a picture for the bank that's going to explain that, and that will help clarify, and that process can go smoothly, because there may be valid reasons from a tax standpoint that you're showing a loss, but on your books, you're profitable. So depreciation, new equipment purchases can factor into that. So that's one big item that often comes up. But you hear it a lot. It's often a motivation of business owners to like get my taxes down to zero. And like, what do I need to spend? Where can I buy to get my tax liability down? And that's not always the best approach. Like if you're trying to grow, like you said, you want to leverage debt sometimes, and that's important. And you're going to need to show profitability to get the loans you want or the best rates possible. So those are conversations. I had that conversation yesterday with a client, actually, like, hey, you have all this new equipment, but you may not want to take it, all that depreciation this year, because, what does your outlook look like? You want to maximize the profitability on your tax return too, depending on where you're headed. So definitely important.
And part of that is just education. So we spend a lot of time. So we see ourselves as educators too, is just talking clients through various scenarios, because you don't know what you don't know. And what Nick said is just, you might think going one direction is the best thing. You just want to bring it down to zero, but that might not be the best for you in the future of your business. So, and let's talk about why.
Right.
Well, I love that you just said that, Dan, because we have a kind of motto here: is it fish or feed? Like, do I just feed you what you need, or do I teach you how to fish? That's kind of that age-old moniker. But I think a part of it in this context, for sure, for you guys, is if they're educated, then they'll be smarter day to day about how they do things.
Absolutely.
And they don't get to you until it's over. The lagging indicator is a little bit too late. But if they're educated along the way, they can make smart decisions in the moment. When the rep comes in and says, "Let's buy 50 grand in Juvederm," it's like, well, I'm not sure that would be a thing that Nick would say I should do. Based on what I know now, should say, well, let me look at my finances first. I think people, when they don't get the education part of it as part of the package and part of the, of the management of their funds, they don't get the benefit of knowing, having like a little Nick on their shoulder telling them what to do in the moment, and they make bad decisions. And it's not because they want to, they just don't have anyone saying, here's the way you should do this going forward. And I think that's part of it that you guys offer between the white glove service, having the, the CFO part, that you teach them what to do, not just do it for them all the time. And I think we miss that a lot in the industry when we have experts. The experts want to be experts, which I love, but also help your person in the chair do things better, so that it's not always dependent on you to come in and save the day.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that's part of the support we offer to our clients, is we encourage them to, when they're making those decisions that are going to have a big impact on their financials, reach out to us beforehand, or as you're trying to weigh the different options and get our feedback, just to give you a different perspective, or weigh the pros and cons of each scenario. Oftentimes two heads are better than one. And even your smartest business owner, like getting that confirmation from a third party that you're making the right move, or maybe you're not, is worth a lot, and you want to be confident in your business decisions. So it's like having a team to support you. And that's part of what we offer, I feel like, is a big value. And we love to encourage our clients, hey, please contact us. Like, let us know when you're doing things before you do it, because that's where we can give you the most value.
And how we like to frame it is that, we, like Nick said in the beginning, we're your like outsourced accounting department. If you had an internal accounting department, you wouldn't make large purchases without first at least mentioning it to your internal accounting department. You pay these members, and you want to make sure that they do the work that they need to do to help you be successful and make the right decisions.
Well, I have a good friend who's not so disciplined with her finances, and when we go to trade shows, she's like, my accountant gave me a budget. I have an allowance, like I can only spend this amount of money, because she will get swindled by the people at the booth every time. She's like, I called the accountant. He said I can spend X amount of dollars only at this trade show, but it's part of also knowing as a person that you're not disciplined and that you don't have self control. And I think having someone else to say, we've looked at the numbers and you can spend X on a device or on inventory or whatever that thing is, because people need guardrails. I for sure need them. And I think when it comes to money, if you have not been in a cash rich business before, and med spas, as we all know, is very cash rich, there's not a lot of expenses, and compared to other businesses, our expenses are pretty light here and they're very controllable for many of us. You got a lot of cash coming in. We talk about this all the time with like promotions and events. I'm sure you guys see this. You get paid like rain during November, during open house season. Like they can't pay you fast enough for all the promotions on Botox and the devices. And then guess what? They come in January and you have to cash all of it in, and that you have to treat them all for free basically because they paid for it 3 months ago. I think that's a very hard thing here. The cyclical nature of our seasonality, and the fact that they pay for it in November, they come get it in January. So I always say January's so dry. But those are things that unless you've been in that kind of an environment, you don't know it's feast or famine sometimes. You go spend all your money and then the bill comes due and it's like, whoop, I spent the money already. I don't have the inventory on the shelf to do all the work in January. So do you guys help with that, like pacing month to month and looking at what should you buy at the end of the year? And should you wait until, January or February, and thinking about your events and your liabilities on the books and your patient wallets and things? How much of that do you get in and tell them, stop spending money? You can't go buy the new house or the new purse.
Yeah, that's a great point, and that's another key area that med spas often overlook is that, package sales, or like you said, balances, client account balances where they haven't cashed it in yet for the services. Like revenue recognition is a big thing there, because you sold the package in November. That doesn't mean it's revenue on your books necessarily at that point in time, because you haven't done the service. So accounting for that properly is a big area where we see a lot of issues in the industry oftentimes. But like you said, also like from a cash flow perspective, you got tons of money coming in. All these services are going to get delivered over the next, few months following, but you got to plan for that and make sure you set aside enough money to buy product, to pay your team, to continue to cover your operating expenses. So, huge important piece is that cash flow planning. And that's definitely a piece we help with in our CFO services. Budgeting and forecasting is a huge component. So yeah, great points there.
Yeah, it burns a hole in my pocket. I'm like, oh, let's go spend it. No, I'm kidding.
Exactly.
I've gotten more disciplined over the years, but it is very hard. I think it is challenging because you think you have it, like you really don't have it yet, guys. But question for you guys, you mentioned buying and selling and things. Really two questions. One is like we hear this word or this term EBITDA all the time. I listened to a Warren Buffett podcast or a thing about him recently. He was like, that number is shit. Don't listen to it. He's like, it's not real. No one cares about that. He's like, when I buy a business, I don't even look at that number. But everyone in the med spa world is like obsessed with that number. It's how you get your multiplier. Right. Obsessed. What's your take on that? I want the hot take. Give me the tea on what we should be looking at as our for real number if we go look at the value of our med spa.
Yeah, I mean, I think EBITDA is important in this space in a lot of ways because, like you said, that's what buyers or investors are looking at and evaluating your business. And that's going to take out some of those big variables like depreciation, which can cause big swings in your profit and loss year to year, especially from a tax perspective. So EBITDA, I do think is important, is a good thing to know, have a good sense. It's a good way to compare more apples to other med spas. So that's a key number. But at the end of the day, cash is king. Like if you don't have that cash flow, then so what, right? Like as a business owner, you're in it to make money and build your personal wealth, at least to some extent. Obviously we all have our own different motivations, but that's usually a big driver of why someone's going to start their own business. So how much are you making as the owner of the business? Are you paying yourself at a market rate, and then are you still profitable? That's what really matters. Like if you're just scraping by or not really paying yourself to continue to keep your business moving month to month, like that's what matters most. Like you want to see that money coming in the door and staying in your bank account. So cash flow would be my big thing. You always want to see that staying positive throughout the year, with the seasonality, obviously the ups and downs. If you're coming out of that slow season still with cash in your bank account, like that's great. So that's where we like to focus.
Yeah, I think I love that you mentioned that because I do think that these numbers are important depending on where you are in your life cycle. If you're getting ready
Yeah.
to sell,
Yeah.
you're dang right it's important. But if you're just trying to be a great owner and run a good business, maybe it's not what you look at quite yet. But I think we hear it just like the TikTok accountants. We hear that all that, and people are like, what does that even mean? I'm like, earnings before interest and tax. Trying to explain to them what it means, like on a financial statement. I'm like, at the end of the day, do you have money in the bank? Can you pay all your bills? Are you profitable? Are you doing things intelligently? That's like the day to day owner metric, not so much all these other fancy terms that we talk about. But to that point, I also wanted to ask about liabilities. We just mentioned that just a second ago. I have a friend who just sold her med spa. She's like, I have all these liabilities. I've got to clear these things all out because they don't want to take on that debt. And they have this like weird value, as you guys know, because I've gotten the money in, but I haven't done the service yet. If I'm a practice who is doing a lot of like events, I have memberships and things, should I think of anything, or in my structure of like 6 months, you have to come in and get it or you lose it, or like there a certain magic way to think about building programs that have patient wallets involved that keep me safe, but also are lucrative for my patients to want to join?
Right. Yeah, I think there's a lot of different approaches with that, but I think what you were alluding to is a really good point in that having some sort of expiration on those patient credits is a great idea from a business perspective because that liability won't infinitely continue to grow. If someone drops off and never comes back, you don't want that liability stuck on your balance sheet for forever. You want to be able to write that off after a period of time. So that's something I would advise. You know, from a legal standpoint, I don't know what state to state, it may be different rules and regulations around what's allowed with that type of thing. But, I would always say if you can have a cutoff date or an expiration date on those, put it in your terms. So, your patients know and your accountants know when they can move that off the balance sheet and recognize that revenue in those type of scenarios. So, yeah, we see that a lot where those numbers are just going to continue to grow. Like gift cards is another one where that number can just keep growing and growing on the balance sheet. And, after a certain point in time, are they ever going to get used or what? So, yeah,
The answer is no, they don't get used, Nick. I think that
I
the
know.
industry average is like less than 30% of all gift cards get
Yeah,
actually
exactly.
consumed. So it's a moneymaker, by the way, because there's no cost involved there. But
True.
but
Yeah.
but my luck, they all come in. My luck, they'd all come in on Tuesday morning at 8 a.m. and be like, we're here to redeem. We're here to get our stuff. It's like running the banks back in the Great Depression. That's my luck. But anyway,
Right.
I digress from that. So as you guys are doing this every day, learning and growing, changing with the industry, what are the watch outs for us? As you're seeing businesses evolving now, we aren't quite in that same accelerator moment that we had, 2 years ago where everyone's just booming and booming and booming. There is a bit of a constriction in the market. I think that may not exactly be real. I think the balance of the invoice is changing now to more med spa focused on weight loss and all this like regenerative stuff. So it's not quite so much filler and toxin, but I think the actual spend is probably the same for patients as it was, even 2 years ago. But as you look at that and you're giving advice to practices, what are the things we should be doing? Should we be, tightening our belts considerably? Are there things that we should be like, what, that expense is not really essential for us? Get it off the books. We don't need that. Like, what are the things that we should be kind of in our mind preparing for as we possibly go into a bit more of a recession?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely a lot more competition. Like we see it, especially, in our area locally, but across the country, there's just more and more med spas out there who are popping up and there's just more competition for each dollar being spent in the space. So for one, that's an important thing to look at. Like you have to be conscious of your pricing and why is someone going to choose you over someone else that's right down the street? So making sure your value is clear and apparent by your website or whatever it may be that's how you're outwardly facing to prospective patients is huge. And yeah, from a cost standpoint, like marketing spend is always going to be important, but also, right, are you overspending for, things you don't need? Like you don't need to be buying that latest piece of equipment every year. Like, is the equipment you have sufficient? Or maybe it's not. Maybe it is time to upgrade, but evaluating that and not just saying, okay, there's a new piece out here, let me go get it, is important because, like you said, there is a little bit more tightening happening. Costs across the board have increased, especially over the last year or two. And making sure you keep up your pricing with those increased costs. You can't absorb price increases from, Allergan or any of your product, who you're purchasing product from, each year. So you have to keep up with that and make sure you're keeping your prices in line with what your costs are looking like. So that's a big one where a few percentages can slip away really easily, and you're losing 2 or 3% from your bottom line, and that's a really a very real number for a lot of med spas when you're talking multiple millions in revenue every year. So those are a couple areas definitely to keep an eye on. And I think the other big thing too is like there's more competition for talent in the space. So making sure you are creating a good environment for your employees, you're paying your employees well at market rates, and doing the things that are important to keep employees, having a good culture, having a good process internally are huge in those regards, because it costs a lot more money to hire and find new talent than it does to keep your existing talent. I'm sure most business owners are aware of that, and whether it's whatever avenues you're going to bring in new talent, it's expensive. So never mind the training costs and all of that. So those are definitely a few areas.
Which you all hit on in the Accelerator conference too, a lot of the core values, the culture, like the importance of building a great environment for your employees, because you want them to stay.
Yeah, because it is very expensive. We hire here a lot. I just told the guys we've increased our headcount quite a bit here. I think, by more than 30% in the past 6 months. And the cost to just do the recruiting and all the interview screens and the onboarding part of it, people don't realize those costs. They're not hard costs. I think we have a really hard time in this industry, again, because if you've not been in kind of in a corporate American environment, the hard cost and the soft cost. The hard cost of I get that I had to spend money to do a thing, but the fact that I'm now in a room doing interviews all day and not running my business, or I'm now training all day so I can see half the amount of patients and I can't do all the things I want to do because I'm now with the trainee instead of doing, my back-to-back books that I'm booked, out for weeks and weeks. I think there's a true opportunity cost here that, from an accounting perspective, thinking about the money, that becomes apparent that I'm trading dollars in some ways. And I think if you don't know, if things that we feel like are not real money, we're like, oh, it's no big deal, I'll take care of it. I do that all the time. And then it's like, wait a minute, I have no time to do the things I have to do my real job and grow the business because I'm doing all these freebies that to save us money. It's like, we're not really saving any money at all. We should be paying the people to do the thing. It's almost like hiring an accountant versus doing it yourself. It's better to hire the person who can do it well, faster, more efficient than you to take the blow. And, because that's still money too. I think about my hourly rate all the time. I say, guys, think about what you make per hour. Times that by the task. If someone can do it better than you for cheaper than you can do it, why are you doing it? It doesn't make any sense for you to do things that could be done better, faster, cheaper somewhere else. I think that's a very hard concept for the do-it-yourselfers to get their mind around that. So I don't know how you teach that, Nick and Dan, but if you have a good way to teach that, let me know, because I want to teach my staff how to think about the soft cost of things. They just don't ever think about it.
Right. It's so true. And people think it's just my time. But in an industry like this specifically, where it's your time is what you're selling in a lot of ways, it's like your capacity is limited by the hours in the day, so any extra time that you can save in different areas where you're not an expert is where you should focus on and cutting back and saving that time and putting it to use, with the hourly rates that people are bringing in revenue wise, providers, it's a no-brainer to outsource some of these administrative tasks to other professionals. So, that's important. It's right from the DIY bookkeeping, business owner. When are you doing this? It's usually 10 o'clock at night, way after hours. And it's the last thing you really want to be doing. And, one, are you an expert? And is it really what you want to be doing with your time, in keeping up this business that you're trying to build?
So it's a little bit of both, you're sacrificing the tangibles, right? You look at how much per hour you can make based on the amount of revenue you bring in for every service you deliver versus how much you pay an expert versus the intangibles where, if you're doing it late at night, you're not sacrificing a service that you're providing for that hour. You're sacrificing time with, family or friends or things like that.
Sleep.
Which is huge, which you need to service your patients well.
And you're not fresh. No one's fresh at 10 o'clock at night. Trust me, I work all night long and I'm never as fresh. But, as an example of that, because I know, our med spa friends listening, this is probably very relevant for them too. We love Canva here. We make a lot of our graphics in Canva, and we have we have a CRM that sends emails, and I could not figure out how to get these emails to look as pretty in our CRM as I do in Canva. So I was spending hours and hours and hours on every email we were sending out, making them look the same, designing them, moving them around. It was probably 5 hours per email. At my hourly rate, that's quite a bit of money. Yeah. I find a girl on Fiverr, she's $7. And she can do the whole thing in less than an hour. So I took my, let's say you're a med spa making money, $500 an hour, maybe on average, times 5 hours doing this, or she's $7. spend the $7, people. Trust me, I didn't do it. I didn't do it for a month. I'm like, holy shit, why am I not spending this? Spend the $7 plus tip. She's like $12. I mean, she's cheap. And I can do 15, 20 emails at a time with her, and she's crazy fast. I felt this need to do it myself. I don't know why, but I didn't know she was even there. I didn't know it existed yet when I looked the first time. But those are the kind of things that, why, if you hate social media, don't do it. Hire someone else. If you hate accounting, get a great bookkeeper. Don't do it yourself. First of all, you won't be as good anyway, but there's just ways, I think, to cut costs that aren't maybe like on the numbers costs, but they will allow you to do more things to grow your business because you're not stuck in all the minutia that is not your wheelhouse. Go do what you do best. Go inject, go be with patients, go do those things. Let us do all the rest of it. I think it's kind of the motto that I've adopted here. In 2024, I'm trying to get better, guys. I'm trying to focus on that this year and not be a do-it-yourselfer. It's tough.
Well, you hear it all the time in this environment. A lot of people talk about leadership. There's a ton of influencers out there. And, the key word going around a lot is like delegation, as a leader, knowing how to delegate. And a lot of these med spa owners are leaders or rising leaders. And a key piece of building a great team is knowing how to delegate to your immediate employees, but also how to delegate, tasks that you can outsource to professionals. So it's a learning curve for sure.
Yeah, I had a employee this morning ask about getting a raise, which is, worthy doing it. I said, but your department P&L is not very good. Like, I want you to look at your numbers again to see what, what we're making and what you're bringing in and the cost for you to do this. And it was like, look at what? What am I doing? I'm like, what you make and what we're spending. And it's, even I think if you're a med spa who has people, injectors running things, a front desk person, for people to kind of understand what it means to have profit, to have, gross revenue is not the real number, all the costs associated with it, and to be thinking about that constantly. We walk around our office here and it's like, I can put cash in the corner and say, well, that's wasted cash. That's wasted cash. Things that are not helping us to grow or benefit or saving us are just idle cash sitting there just getting burned for nothing. I think burn rate is so important when you're a new business or you're a small business. Burning cash is a big deal. And I think we don't think about that enough, that everyone in the practice bears some responsibility in being mindful of our finances. We all have to be cognizant of that, whether it's, using too much paper on the printer or you dropped your iPad 3 times, like, okay, well, finally you have to buy your own. Like, I can't keep buying you one. Like, I'm done with it. There comes a point where somebody has to own that. And I think we have to all own that and teach all of us financial literacy in some way. So we're focusing on that here this year. It's like really focusing on financial literacy as an entire business, not just me doing it all, right? Everyone doing it, everyone being part of it, and all of us making good decisions. So I feel like that's the thing that we've not yet tackled in this industry yet, to think that everybody has some part of this that we have to all contribute in a way that's meaningful. But hopefully you guys will come out with a good course for all people in the practice to learn how to be financially responsible for their owners.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah.
I can't do the waste anymore. Well, Dan, to go back to you here, as they go through this onboarding process and they're a part of your world, how much do you want to jump in and help them do things in their business? I hear you talking about, obviously you do business development, marketing, all these things. How much of that do they get sort of as an ancillary add-on just by way of being around you guys, where you're like, what, you should probably think about doing this, and this? Because I think that people look at the numbers like, why am I not growing? Well, you're spending the right amount of money, you're doing the right investments, but you got a bad business plan. How much of that do you kind of help and sprinkle in along the way as you guys have clients?
Yeah, I'm not too sure. When we see opportunities like that, obviously we're always available for, whenever we see an opportunity, if we can provide direct value, we will, and provide that feedback, we will, because, we're growing a business as well. So there's a lot of things we're learning. We like to share. Like I mentioned, we're educators. The great part of this industry is, like I mentioned, the partners that we partner with as well. So if there's an opportunity, it may not be an ancillary benefit that we're providing, but if we see an opportunity where, hey, they're lacking in like a business plan, or, they're lacking in their HR support and things like that, we have strong relationships with partners and that focus specifically in this industry, but also that are just really good at what they do. So we like to support in those, like you mentioned, ancillary pain points or gaps that they might have within their business.
Yeah, I think the big thing that we do is make connections with other professionals in the industry, and make sure, with our connections that we have, if marketing's a big pain point, you're not getting what you need out of that, maybe we can make a connection with somebody who's going to get you the results you're looking for. Or legal, maybe you need some legal support, like Dan said, HR, whatever it may be. That's where we can see, here's where it seems like things aren't, lining up correctly, or you're not getting the results you want from your business, and this seems to be the issue. Let us make a connection with a professional in that space who can steer you in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that's so important. We do the same thing here. I feel like that's kind of our. I want to jump in and help so much. I'm like, but you know what? I can't. But I have a great firm you should call. I've got a great person that we've kind of already vetted. We know they do good work, because that to me is the benefit of having you guys do it. You're in the industry. You have the connections. If you go to a firm that doesn't have that, they don't know who the best attorney is working on med spa law. They don't know who does marketing and all the things that we have to have, all the rules and regulations for the, FTC and all the things we have to have for social media. They don't know all the things that we face with events and promotions and planning. I think having a person in your network that knows this industry really well and has connections in this industry is invaluable. Like, I just think that's such a big part of it. And you guys see it all happening before it happens. I think the numbers tell you the story oftentimes before the thing comes to fruition. You can kind of see it and say, I think I see a train coming down the tracks here. You might want to call an attorney for this one. And I just think that you can't put a value on that, of having someone somewhere that's looking at things saying, I'm not the person that can help you, but I have a great person who can. And by the way, I think you need to go get help. I just think that's part of you being in this industry that just makes it really unique and novel for you guys to be, be with us and be making such an impact with all of our practices. So I love what you're doing. Love it.
No, it's great. And that's what I love about working with small business. That's like, to me, small business is very important. My family background, like my grandfather owned a small business that my father ran, and my brother works in now. And small business has always been a part of my life. So helping business owners is what I love to do, and help them succeed and see them build their businesses and reach their goals is awesome. So whatever connections we can make or support we can provide is what we love to do, and see that success happen. So.
And that desire that Nick has specified is trickled down through the entire company. Like, everybody has a vested interest in the success of our business owners. I mean, we're talking about that constantly. Our conversations we don't only talk about accounting and our clients. We have other fun conversations internally.
No, you don't.
Can
Don't
be fun,
lie.
but we do genuinely have a vested interest. And
Well, that's the core values, right? That's hiring people who align to your passion. We mentioned that at the Accelerator Conference. That's one of ours here, is our end users are North Star. Our customers are our North Star here. It's part of all of our discussions, what we do, how we think, how we make decisions in the morning. Like, it's always about the customer. In our case, the client being the practice owner and their patient as well. That dictates our whole life here. I think you guys have probably the exact same idea that whatever is good for them is what we have to do and provide that value. And I think when you hire folks who align to that mission, and you have an owner who's aligned to that mission, the whole team is behind that, it just makes success so much, I don't want to say easier, but much more achievable when we're all going in the same direction for the same reasons, with the same kind of ethics and mindset and all the things that make a business work. And as a med spa owner, it's almost more important, right? Because patient safety is paramount. Thinking about the client experience, what you mentioned, Nick, it's so competitive now. You've got to wow them in every experience and razzle dazzle every single time to keep your clients at your practice. I just think we undervalue in many cases, like what you just mentioned, that it trickles down as part of the DNA of your business, and it has to be really, 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 really paramount for you as an owner when you think about hiring and firing. But that's my 2 cents. I love, as you guys know, I love core values around here. I love thinking about the mindset, because I just think, I was just telling these guys, I'm reading the David Goggins book, and mindset is everything. I mean, mindset for a business, mindset for an employee, for a customer. That's the way the world works. You got to have good mindset. And I think in your case for sure, it's like running a good business, to help them be sustainable and profitable and enjoy their life and have financial freedom long term is probably, what they all want to do too. So it all lines up.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
Absolutely.
Well, I want you to tell the audience how to find you, but I'm going to pick on you and tell you, Dan, get an Instagram. I tried to tag you guys. I tried to tag you guys 100 times when we accelerated. But what is your Instagram? I'm going to start an Instagram.
I'm getting there, Tiffany. Don't you
You
worry.
could hire an expert, Dan. You could hire someone to do it for you.
I got to find that $7 hire that I can make to get Instagram off my plate.
But no, tell us how to find you on the internet, and if you guys are any conferences coming up or anything that we should know about, or things you're doing online or educational events, give us all the deets.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll do that. So Dan Simard, Director of Business Development. Phone works 603-263-5033, 603-263-5033. And then my email is just d.simard@ligoricpa.com. You can look us up, Liguori Accounting. We come up pretty quick on Google. All of our information is on our website. And I'm sure there'll be another method of getting in touch with us.
Yeah, usually the best way to connect is just through our website. We have a fillable form there to get in touch and schedule a meeting. And we'd be happy to do a complimentary meeting with anyone, any podcast listeners who are interested in following up with us and having a conversation about your business. Also social media. We're on LinkedIn and Facebook fairly actively, especially LinkedIn, and hopefully soon to be Instagram as well. Yeah.
Maybe even TikTok. You can guys be the TikTok accountants. I'm kidding. Don't be TikTok.
I'll be the dancing accountant. That's what it's gonna be.
But I think LinkedIn has all the good stuff anyway. You guys have lots of blogs that come out and lots of good content there. But I'll make sure that for the listeners, you have all that in our show notes that you can get a hold of these guys, because I can't recommend them enough, and I can't stress enough how much you need someone like Nick and Dan on your team to make life easier and first of all, legally better, more compliant, but to save money, to spend money correctly, and just to do the things that make your practice grow. I always say, like, don't lose on the things that you could easily solve. Like, don't lose out on the taxes and bookkeeping and things that could be easily solved by someone who's an expert in it. If you lose on things that you can't control, I get it, but this you can for sure control by getting an expert. And I think you guys definitely fit the bill for that. So guys, go find them like right now. When this is over, go look them up, go get involved, get a consult, and get your business squared up and all lined out for the rest of 2024 and going into 2025. But anything coming up for you guys that we should know about? Hopefully you'll be at the next accelerator. We'll hear more from you about growth and scale. But anything else on the books?
We have just a trip in November. AmSpa is doing a boot camp, so we'll go there and support however we can. And we're always any other opportunities that come up we're not aware of, but I'm sure there's going to be more coming down the pike.
Yeah, we plan to be around more and more at these events as time goes on. So you'll definitely see our faces out there.
Well, I've got some ideas for my AR people to do a webinar with you guys to go through some reporting and some general thoughts and things, because I feel like when they hear it from you, it makes sense. They hear it from me, they're like, what is she saying? So like, you need the expert to say it. You don't need the country girl with a bad accent to tell you. You need the smart guys in the room to tell you what to do. But no, I appreciate you guys coming on and being a great partner to us with Accelerator. They just rocked it during their sessions there. And I think there's just so much that's going to happen in the next 2 to 3 years in this industry. It's going to be critical to have good people in your corner, and you guys fit the bill. So I will see, hopefully, you guys at some point soon, maybe even Aesthetic Next. I don't know. You should come check us out. But if not, I will see you for sure at the next accelerator. And for all the listeners, we'll see you on the next episode of For the Record. Bye, Dan. Bye, Nick.
Thanks, Tiffany.
Bye, Tiffany. Thank you.
Thanks for listening to another episode of For the Record. This podcast is not intended to provide legal or medical advice. It's for entertainment, education, and information purposes only. For more information on this week's guest or to get started with Aesthetic Record, email us at info@aestheticrecord.com. Be sure to tune in next week for more fresh perspectives on disrupting the status quo and surviving in the aesthetics industry.